That's how Strong's defines belief, intellectual faith. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been in the church long enough, some 20 years now, that I know that the word intellectual and faith have never been preached in the same sentence. That nowhere has anybody ever taught me the concept of intellectual faith. They've told me that faith is foolishness. They told me that faith is blind. They've told me that faith is just kind of like craziness. But no one has ever told me that faith can be intellectual. But that's exactly how Strong's defines the word believe, is intellectual faith. Now this concept is interesting. Intellectual faith, the faculty of reasoning or understanding objectively. Reasoning or understanding objectively. The mere acknowledgement of some fact or event is an intellectual faith. So one of the statements that I made last week is about intellectual faith is that faith is not void of proof. And a lot of people believe that faith is void of proof, and they try to coincide that with the teaching in Hebrews chapter 11 that talks about faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. But I would challenge that mentality that the way you go into reading the Word of God will decide on how you interpret the Word of God. And so if your mentality is of a certain bias, then the way you read the Word of God will be on that same bias. Are you with me? Mm-hmm. And so you can read that and you say, see, faith is something that's unseen. No, it says that faith is the substance. Substance is like this chair. This is substance right here. Faith is substance. It's evidence. Is there a chair there? Yes. Sit down in it. That's a chair. It's evidence right there. That's a chair. It's got 4 legs and a back to it. Put your butt in it. It's a chair. It's evidence. The concept of intellectual faith is the reality that you can't believe something unless you know it to be true. Whoa. Believing is not what we've seen, but what we see. Believing is not what you've heard, but what you hear. Believing is not what you know, known, but what you know. Believing is a present. It's right here, right now. It's not based off of yesterday, and it's not about tomorrow. It is a concept of the here and now. Ooh. I made this statement that faith is not void of proof, and that increasing faith comes from proven faith. As we talked about the sermon series that I taught not too long ago on faith, we talked about how increasing faith is that once you establish faith, once you establish positive faith, increasing faith, you build on that faith. Your faith continues to get bigger. You start to think and believe for bigger things. You start to look at things and say, yeah, I can believe for that.
That's right.
And how can you believe for those things? It's all based off of what you believed yesterday. I can believe that God can do that tomorrow because I just saw Him do it yesterday.
That's right.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Now, see, faith does come by hearing, and hearing by the Word of God. But the challenge here is for you to understand that intellectual faith is the establishment of proof that it exists. That you cannot live blindly through this life saying you believe something and it never becoming a reality to you. Oh, we're getting there, church. We talked about in Deuteronomy chapter 1, verse 30 and 33. We talked about where God establishes His principles with man, and He says, I have gone before you in the wilderness to establish this, so you can see me ahead of you. So how do we know which direction to go? We saw God going in that direction. And so we went. And so every morning we got up, we packed up our tent, and we looked to the sky. And we said, there he is, and there we go. Yeah. And every day we ended up where we were supposed to be, and God provided for us every day, and there was never a day where when we woke up that the provision of God was not in our life. And so it became intellectual faith. They established intellectual faith by what they saw yesterday, knowing that tomorrow will be the same. Oh, glory. We talked about in 2 Chronicles 20:20. And I love that because we talked about the term earlier, 2020, vision. Hindsight being 2020. Believing is how we become established. And that brings prosperity. And that's exactly what that word in 2 Chronicles 20:20 says. It says, believe in the Lord your God, and so shall you be established. Believe in his prophets, and you shall prosper. That's 2020. Believe in the Lord your God, and you will be established. Now the funny thing is the word established, and we didn't talk about this last week, the word established is the same word as believe. So really, what the author of 2 Chronicles is saying is, believe in the Lord your God, and you shall believe. It's a redundancy. Believe in the prophets, and you shall succeed or prosper. I want you to understand that. That belief is based off of belief.